Scene 1 of Twister opens with urgency but quickly reveals that its true storm is emotional rather than meteorological, using the approaching tornado as a catalyst to surface feelings that have long been buried under silence, fear, and habit. Kenna, watching the news on her cell phone, establishes her as someone oriented toward facts, preparation, and control, a role many queer women adopt as a way to manage a world that often feels unsafe, while Brianne's frantic search through the house calling her name immediately positions her as more emotionally exposed. Her fear not just of the tornado but of facing life without having been fully known. When the reception cuts out, the loss is more than technological. It symbolizes the failure of external systems to protect them, forcing the women inward toward each other. Running into the closet, guided by Kenna's knowledge of load-bearing walls, becomes an act of trust and care, a moment where practical safety overlaps with emotional containment. And the closet itself carries heavy symbolic weight for LGBTQ+ audiences, as a space historically associated with hiding. Yet here, the closet becomes a place not of denial, but of potential truth, challenging the narrative that queerness must remain hidden to survive. Kenna, telling Brianne it's safe, operates on two levels, addressing both the physical danger outside and the emotional danger of vulnerability between them. Brianne's fear of dying a virgin, while initially framed with nervous humor, speaks to a deeper anxiety familiar to many queer women. The fear that life might end before one has had the chance to live authentically, to name desire out loud, or to experience love on one's own terms. Kenna's response, "You can't change fate," reflects a worldview shaped by resignation, perhaps by years of minimizing her own wants to maintain stability, and this contrast between them highlights two common survival strategies within queer experience, one rooted in acceptance of limitation, the other in resistance to it. Brianne's insistence that she knows better signals a quiet rebellion against the idea that desire must always wait for permission or perfect timing, and her gaze toward Kenna is not framed as opportunistic but as long-held, tender, and deeply human. When she thinks of Kenna as beautiful, it is not an objectifying moment but an acknowledgement of emotional gravity, the recognition of someone who has mattered for a long time without being named as such. For lesbian viewers, this moment resonates as a familiar ache, the experience of wanting someone quietly for years while convincing oneself that wanting alone is enough. The question, "Can I kiss you?" carries enormous weight precisely because of its simplicity. It models consent, care, and respect, countering harmful narratives that queer intimacy is impulsive or boundaryless. Kenna's surprise is equally meaningful, revealing how often queer women underestimate their own desirability or assume that mutual feelings are impossible until proven otherwise. The looming tornado intensifies the stakes, but the film resists turning this into spectacle, instead using the threat as a reminder of mortality and the urgency of honesty. This scene challenges society's discomfort with women expressing love for each other, by framing that expression as calm, consensual, and emotionally sincere, rather than sensational. The discomfort persists in broader culture because women's desire, especially when it does not center men, disrupts long-standing norms about passivity, purity, and relational hierarchy. By placing this moment in a context of danger, the film exposes the irony that society is more comfortable with women facing physical catastrophe than emotional truth. Kenna and Brianne's interaction mirrors real-world pressures on queer women to downplay feelings, to label them as jokes, phases, or hypothetical, and to wait for extraordinary circumstances before allowing themselves to speak. The closet, the storm, and the fading signal all converge to strip away those excuses, leaving only the essential question of connection. For women in general, this scene speaks to the universal fear of regret, the pain of unrealized desire, and the longing for emotional safety that comes from being seen and chosen. Kenna embodies the role of protector and realist, someone who has learned to prioritize survival over vulnerability, while Brianne represents emotional honesty and the courage to risk rejection for the sake of truth. Together, they illustrate how intimacy often emerges not from grand declarations, but from quiet moments where fear and desire coexist. For LGBTQ+ audiences seeking authenticity, this opening scene offers recognition rather than fantasy, honoring the reality that coming into visibility is often prompted not by confidence but by necessity. It affirms that choosing to speak desire aloud, even in a closet during a storm, is an act of self-discovery and resistance, a way of saying that love, however fragile, deserves space to exist before the world decides otherwise. Scene 2 of Twister shifts from the adrenaline of survival to the quieter, more devastating aftermath, where intimacy is no longer protected by crisis and must face the realities of consequence, choice, and visibility. The image of Brianne and Kenna found in each other's arms is less about exposure than about interruption, the moment when private truth collides with the social world. Mona opening the closet door functions symbolically as society itself, arriving uninvited to judge, define, and reframe what two women have just discovered together. For queer viewers, this interruption is painfully familiar, echoing the experience of having moments of authenticity abruptly cut short by external expectations. The following morning's separation between Brianne and Kenna is emotionally heavy not because of rejection, but because of displacement, as Brianne leaves not out of shame, but out of necessity, making space for a conversation that feels overdue and fraught. Kenna staying behind to face Mona underscores her tendency to prioritize unresolved longing over the safety of what has already been shared, a pattern many queer women recognize when desire attaches itself to the unavailable. Kenna's feelings for Mona are intense and sincere, shaped by secrecy, stolen moments, and the intoxicating validation of being wanted by someone who is not free. Her fear that Mona will be angry reveals how queer women are often taught to compete quietly for emotional legitimacy, worrying not just about betrayal but about hierarchy, about whose desire counts more. Mona's response is marked by restraint, an attempt to reclaim composure after being forced into visibility. Her decision to stop cheating on her male partner is framed not as moral superiority, but as self-reckoning, exposing the internalized guilt many women carry when their desires do not align with the lives they have built. Mona questioning her character reflects the harsh standards imposed on women, especially queer or questioning women, who are expected to navigate desire without collateral damage in a world that offers few safe pathways to do so. Kenna's attempt to soothe Mona reveals a deep empathy, but also a desperation born from years of minimization, as she pleads not just for Mona's love, but for legitimacy, asking to be chosen openly rather than in secret. Her plea to leave him is not about conquest, but about relief, about ending the fragmentation that secrecy demands. For lesbian audiences, this moment captures the ache of loving someone who is still negotiating their own permission to want differently. Society's discomfort with women loving women surfaces here through Mona's fear of what her actions mean about her worth, reinforcing how queerness is often framed as a moral detour rather than a valid destination. The scene resists vilifying any of the women, instead showing how each is constrained by roles that demand silence, sacrifice, or self-denial. Brianne's absence lingers as a quiet counterpoint, representing the possibility of uncomplicated truth that Kenna momentarily touched and then set aside. For women broadly, this scene speaks to the pain of choosing between emotional safety and emotional intensity, and to the way longing can pull people towards situations that mirror unhealed wounds. The closet, once a refuge, becomes a memory, reminding viewers that coming into the open is rarely linear or clean. By centering conversation over spectacle, the film challenges the idea that queer stories must hinge on scandal, instead illuminating the slow, painful work of honesty. This scene affirms that visibility is not achieved through grand gestures but through difficult conversations that risk loss. And in doing so, it honors the complexity of women learning to name what they want without apology. It acknowledges that love does not resolve itself neatly, that feelings can overlap without invalidating their sincerity, and that choosing oneself often means disappointing others. A reality queer women navigate with particular intensity because their desires are so often scrutinized. Mona's composure masks fear of social consequence, while Kenna's urgency reflects hunger for wholeness, and their exchange becomes a study in how women learn to police themselves before others ever do. The morning light offers no answers, only the opportunity to speak, and that speaking itself becomes an act of resistance against erasure, inviting viewers to sit with ambiguity rather than demand closure. It insists that visibility is fragile, earned moment by moment, and that truth spoken softly can still alter lives, reminding women watching that their emotions are not excess, but evidence of being alive, deserving care, honesty, and the courage to remain present even when outcomes remain uncertain. Within this scene, the film affirms that queer love need not be perfect to be meaningful, and that choosing visibility, even imperfectly, is itself a form of survival and grace. For women seeking recognition rather than judgment, this moment offers truth and honors the complexity of becoming visible in a harsh world.